Mining has transformed the largely agricultural region around Orange in central western New South Wales since the late 90s. It's injected billions of dollars into the local economy. But some farmers no longer believe the region's dwindling water and land resources can support both agriculture and mining. And a bold new proposal has them on edge. About 100 kilometres east of Orange is Lithgow's Centennial Coal operation. It's always had a problem. What to do with the contaminated water generated by its longwall coal mining operation? For a decade, this water was discharged into a river that feeds Sydney's drinking water catchment before a Supreme Court ruling in 2016 required the company to treat the water first. Centennial Coal's recent expansion in the Lithgow Valley has created surplus wastewater, and up to 350,000 litres of treated wastewater is being discharged each day into the Sydney water catchment under an Environment Protection Authority licence. Now, a possible long-term solution has arisen, which would ship the water from the coal mine to the state's west. The proposed Regis McPhillamy gold mine at Blaney, not far from Orange, will bring jobs to the town as well as investment in infrastructure and the community. But it needs water to operate. Without water, there will be no mine. And it's in negotiations to take Centennial Coal's wastewater with the construction of a 90-kilometre pipeline. But local farmers and scientists fear that plan could contaminate the water table itself.
What do the people of Ballabula and Blaney think they're going to get? This is the worst single point source of water pollution I've seen in the Sydney Basin in my professional lifetime, which is 30 years of this.
Dr Ian Wright is a lecturer and researcher at the University of Western Sydney and has studied the water that the pipeline would carry from the Lithgow coal mine to Blaney's proposed gold mine. He says the risk of carting the water across this stretch of land is too great.
It's a 80 to 90 kilometre pipeline, so it transits a lot of country and there's some big elevations involved, which means that there'll be some high pressure pumping. I've worked in the water industry. All pipes and pumps at some point fail. And when you've got such hazardous levels of metals, even a 1 to 100 dilution, this sort of nickel and zinc levels in here would be really dangerous to aquatic life. They could build up in the soil.
The proposal includes a plan to build a tailings dam on the Ballabula River's headwaters. Tailings are a byproduct of gold mining and are created when rock is pulverised to separate valuable gold from ore. Chemicals such as cyanide are added to the ground rock to assist in the separation of gold from ordinary rock particles. The gold is then removed and the finely crushed rock and chemical slurry left over is dumped in a tailings dam. Rebecca and Dan Price's family have farmed around Blaney for 5 generations, breeding beef cattle. They've endured countless droughts and floods and are now contending with climate change. They fear the proposed piped wastewater and the proposed tailings dam location could contaminate the Ballabula River, threatening their farming operation and the wider river system.
There's 2 reasons it's going to leak into the system. The first reason is that they actually designed the tailings storage facility to leach under the wall, albeit at a very slow rate, but they have designed it to do so. And the second is that there are over 25 springs under the tailings storage facility. That's where the majority of the springs that feed this river lie. And these springs pop up and pop down all throughout the season. And the risk of these springs being contaminated and them not being able to monitor that is a very real major risk for us.
Regis declined an interview with the ABC, but in a statement said extensive investigations have been undertaken around the mine operation site and that the design of the McPhillamy's tailings dam had been peer-reviewed by international experts. Regis says it is confident the tailings dam design meets best practice and is being engineered to the highest dam safety criteria.
I've never seen a mine site that doesn't leak some form of contamination, and that there are serious issues about how well this will affect plant growth and also livestock.
The Regis McPhillamys development proposal was lodged in 2016 in the midst of an unprecedented drought in New South Wales. That drought and the project's water demands have kept it on the Minister for Planning, Rob Stokes's desk for 5 years.
Water is, one of the major concerns that's been raised by the community, and also is a concern for regulators to make sure that those concerns about the impacts on water into the longer term are properly addressed.
The Minister is months off making a final decision on the project and says the impact on downstream water users will be a key consideration.
Once that assessment is finalised, it will be provided to the Independent Planning Commission, who will then make an independent expert arm's length determination on the project. But even then, because of its potential environmental impacts and the water trigger under the Federal Environmental Planning and Biodiversity Conservation Act, it'll then have to go to the Federal Environment Minister for sign-off as well.
The proposed pipeline solution solves Centennial Coal's wastewater problem. It goes partway to solving Regis's water shortage problem, but it's not enough. So Regis is in talks with the New South Wales Government for access to a large water licence that would allow surface water from the Belubula River to be used for mining operations at a time when rivers in New South Wales are on a drying trend.
Dealing with less water over time, so allocations is going to become a more fraught issue. That's just the reality, and that's why governments are doing whatever we can to make storages more efficient and to make better use of the water we already have. And there's the good news is there's a lot we can do to increase the efficiency of water use, but there's not a lot we can do to increase the amount of water.
That's not enough to reassure Rebecca Price. She says the allocation system still favours the mining company, and those on the ground must live with the consequences.
They don't realise they're playing with people's livelihoods, they're playing with our livelihood. We don't get a say in any of this. They get to deal with it with the department, and off they go on their merry way. And yet we're the ones left here with lower flow, an unhealthy river system, and downstream users in the Lachlan will be severely affected.
For David Price, neighbouring gold mine Newcrest Cadia is a living example of how fraught farming alongside a mining operation can be.
You've only got to look at Cadia's wall broke 2 years ago. We've had Browns Creek mine flood, and Junctions Reef is seeping. It's an old cyanide mine and it's seeping out. So there's not a great track record from the mining.
Stuart and Jem Green's beef and lamb grazing operation is in a neighbouring valley, 35 kilometres from the proposed Regis gold mine at Blaney. Wow, what a view.
There's a cracker.
The Greens have farmed alongside the Newcrest Cadia gold mine, one of the biggest gold mines in the world, in relative harmony for 20 years, until Newcrest Cadia's tailings dam wall failed in 2018. Their property is routinely covered in tailings dust as a result. So that's the southern tailings dam there.
Yeah, so you can see the southern on this end and the northern up on this side with where the slump has occurred. It's just a spot that can give you a really good idea of where the dust is moving to, what direction it's going.
How does it feel on those really bad dust days?
It's quite surreal in many respects because it almost looks fake and yet you know it's happening. It's very white. We can get a really solid handle on what direction it's travelling, and the unknown for me is how far those very small dust particles are actually travelling.
Do you know what's in it?
Look, our understanding is that there is a mixture of small heavy metal particles as well as efflorescent salts that can be inhaled into the body, sit on pasture, sit in landscapes, go into ruminant guts more than likely, and there's so much that we don't know.
The Greens are concerned about the long-term environmental effects of the wall fail.
There was probably really quite reasonable levels of trust and faith that things would be sorted out, and we fully appreciate that things take time. But 3.5 years later, we're still looking at you know, how that's going to improve and change, and there's been massive levels of dust.
It's the long-term impact that we are concerned about. This dust that's coming across is very fine. It's what they call the PM 2.5, which is that fine that it's actually dissolvable and can pass through membrane walls. And to be clear, when we're talking dust, it's not dusts like you see dust storms during the drought rolling in with red dust. This is a material that blows off the surface of a tailings dam, which is from a byproduct of chemical reactions in a gold mine to extract gold from the ore. It's not dirt.
Newcrest Cadia told the ABC they don't take their position in the community for granted and continually strive towards improving ways in which they can work with their neighbours to successfully and positively coexist. The company says it appreciates that mining and agriculture have a long, intertwined history and that they want to play their part in shaping the future of the region. The Greens say the changing climate complicates the relationship between mining and agriculture and that there's simply less margin for error.
I think that the resources are limited and we need to be working together to make sure that those resources are shared equally among everyone and not being skewed towards one organisation or one enterprise alone. Drought modelling has it, or climate modelling has it, that it is going to get drier, so these resources, and particularly water, are going to become more scarce and more valuable.
And it is a true tipping point because we're seeing changes within the water landscape locally, and that may be deemed as anecdotal, but when someone's bore has dropped 10, 15 metres in the last 10 years, that is evidential.
In terms of can we coexist, then to me, no. Because you both need to be moving forward, thinking about your environment. More so now with the way the environment's going and with how we're abusing it, we need to change that so quickly.
We as farmers here, when it stops raining, we have to wind back our production to suit what rainfall that we get. We've got to match our stocking rate to our carrying capacity to the grass we grow. The mine over there carries on whether it's the worst drought or the wettest year. Their production doesn't alter and they keep asking for increases in their processing rate. How long can that go on for?
Mining is not going away. We know certainly things like open cut coal mine, mining in new areas is probably a thing of the past. But that's not to say that we don't need mining for copper, for gold, for rare metals and so forth, which are going to be increasingly important as our energy system transitions. So we're going to need answers to these questions. But as a general proposition, fundamentally, and any kindergarten student could tell you that due to the marginal nature of this continent, our water resources need to be considered first.
A decision on the Regis McPhillamy gold mine is not likely until 2022.